Thank you very much. I understand that you are a conservative politician, and that's why you protect private property. So if you buy something, then it's yours. So why don't you respect the same thing in case of the video games? I believe that I do not buy a house or something physical, only a license for playing a game. And that's why I want rules that will be clear both for the producers and also for the purchasers of the licenses.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ms. Nimurgu.
Thank you, Commissioner and President. These games tell stories and they are part of our culture. There are millions of people who play these games. It's more than just entertainment. It creates friendship across countries and languages. It brings people and cultures together. It creates a community, and these are the values we celebrate in Europe. But today, these games can just disappear overnight. A server may be closed down, and then the games are gone. This isn't fair or proper. Gamers should not be left without anything. We need to keep these games alive, long beyond to ensure that they are protected. We need to listen to representatives of the sector and protect culture. We need to ensure greater fairness for the gamers. When someone buys a game, they should be able to have the opportunity to play that game for as long as they wish. Let's promote this initiative. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ms. Ohizalu.
Chair, Commissioner, colleagues, I love video games. I've been collecting them since I was a little girl. All the memories, the friendships, winning and losing together. And here's the thing, I can still play those games, those old console games from the 90s, but many newer ones, gone. Not because they broke, but because a publisher decided to shut down a server. Sometimes without even telling the players. We're talking about an industry bigger than movies. Esports draws more viewers than traditional sports right now. This is real culture, and it is being deleted. If you buy something, shouldn't you then own it? That's the idea behind the Stop Destroying Video Games initiative, supported by over 1.3 million Europeans. And we're not asking for everything. We cannot place the entire financial burden of preservation on developers, of course, especially on the smaller ones. But at the very least, games should be allowed to survive when their servers don't. That's not radical, that's the bare minimum, and I hope the Commission will follow the initiative.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ms. Sipniewski.
Thank you very much. I support the initiative Stop Destroying Video Games. I'm a player myself, but unfortunately I'd have less time for that now because of work. But my children have plenty of time and they play too. And that's very good. If they play in moderation, they're learning creativity and they're discovering this taste of success and learning how to lose. And so it's a good preparation for the real world. Now, what are we talking about here? Well, imagine if a car manufacturer suddenly turned the engine off in our car that we'd bought. We wouldn't be able to drive it. We could get in, but we wouldn't be able to drive it around. In the game sector, that's what is happening. Publishers are blocking products that we've already bought. It's a violation of consumer rights, and we should change that. Cutting off access to games that people have paid an awful lot of money for in the past. Now, we're not suggesting that servers be financed forever, but rather they can be hosted privately. And so I support this initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Geisel.
President, Commissioner, colleagues, let's get one thing clear. I'm not one of the 41 million Germans who play video games on a regular basis, but nevertheless, I do support this initiative. if you purchase a license for a video game, you clearly understand that you can play that game for as long as you want. If you buy a book, then you don't expect the publisher to come around your house and take it back off your bookshelf a couple of years later. With the producers and developers can decide freely when they switch their servers off, then the reality of this, that it's the consumer, the customer, who's taking on the risk for the economic success or failure of this video game. And that's not in line with the basic understanding of ownership. So we need to know that gamers are aware of what they're doing when they purchase a video game. Thank you very much.
Nästa redner är kollega Wab.
Thank you, Mr. Warborn.
Madam President, Commissioner, dear colleagues, almost 1.3 million people across Europe have signed this initiative, and I think that's a signal we need to take seriously. But taking it seriously also means that we have to ask the right questions. And the right question is not only how do we protect consumers, and don't take me wrong, because that is one of the important questions, but the right question is also how do we build a stronger European game industry? Because right now, Europe is competing against giants in the US and in Asia. And if we respond to this initiative with unworkable solutions, we do not help consumers, we help our competitors. Video games are complex, creative works built on licensed content, online infrastructure and third-party arrangements. Forcing companies to keep games running indefinitely or hand over the server code might be a solution, but it's not the simple solution in every situation. In many cases, it is technically or financially impossible and legally problematic. And it would hit the smaller companies and studios hardest. What we should do instead is three things. Better transparency for consumers upfront, fair notice before the games goes offline, and thirdly, a better condition for European developers to grow, compete and keep gamers engaged. Thank you.
Dear colleague Warborn, there is a green card by colleague Vieira. Do you accept it? Yes. A green card. I'm sorry, a blue card.
We love green cards.
Yes, she's from the Greens. Okay. So a blue card from a Green.
Thank you very much, Chair. Colleague Warborn, I can agree with a lot of what you said, but you also spoke about the importance of defending the video game industry in Europe. I can very much agree with that. But of course, when we legislate our market for our consumers, we don't just apply that legislation to European companies. We can apply to whatever companies want to operate in our market. So given that reality, would you then change your opinion or be open to making sure that consumer protection can go in hand with supporting European video game industries? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. That's, I think, what I said as well. If we need to have transparency so that the consumers know what they buy, and in some cases I think that is not very clear today. But at the same time, it is a growing industry that is important for Europe, and I think without the publishers, without the developers, there will be no engagement from the consumers. So we need to have both in mind and not only one of the issues. And that's how we build a strong European gaming industry and a strong community for the users.
Dankeschön. There is a second blue card by colleague Welken.
I had to go to my place because I left my card here. So thank you very much for your speech. I just simply have one question. What do you tell European publishers like CD Projekt Red who actively support this initiative by arguing that they don't want it? So I think there are many publishers in Europe who know that they build a community and they do not want to disappoint them, and they know that they need customers happy. So what do you tell publishers from Europe that you are not fully supporting this initiative?
I think you're absolutely right in this. And the thing is that all publishers are not the same. They have different business models, they work differently, and that's why if we do any regulation, we have to take every different companies into play. We have this think small principle in the European Union when we do our legislation, and that means that we have to cater for not least the smallest ones. And I'm afraid that if we have too hard regulation on this area, then we will not have European publishers there, and that will be at the loss, of course, of the businesses, but also of the consumers.
Dankeschön. Dann kommen wir zur nächsten Redner.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ms. Mendia.
Thank you, President. Commissioner, imagine you buy an e-book and then years later you can't read it. Someone's decided to deactivate it. This is what happens today with lots of video games. Video games are part of the daily lives of millions of households around Europe. They create talent, innovation, jobs and creativity. They also create cultural heritage in Europe. Europe cannot allow this digital culture to disappear because it's no longer profitable. If you buy a video game, you have a right to know how long you will be able to use it for and what happens if this service disappears. This debate is not against innovation or the sector, it's defending transparency, consumer rights and digital heritage. So we ask the Commission to act, listening to gamers and not only the industry. The Digital Fairness Act protects consumers and we need to ensure protect the youngest against abusive practices. Video games are part of our culture and Europe has a responsibility to protect innovation and people. Thank you very much.
Dankeschön. Das Wort erhält nun der Kollege van Lanschot.
Thank you, Mr. van Lanschot.
Thank you. As a young boy, 30 years ago, the most important decision for me was Bulbasaur, Charmander or Squirtle. I loved playing Pokemon and wanted to be the very best. 30 years later, if I go to my mom's attic, pull out my old Game Boy and put in some new batteries, boom, Professor Oak is telling me to pick my starter. Charmander all the way. But today, too many video games will not work 30 years later. They might not even work 30 days later. Despite games being sold with no expiry date, the moment the game makers decide to shut down support, these games become unplayable. Game over, no Charmeleon. It's bad for all lovers of games, as the 1.2 million people signing this petition to stop destroying video games shows. Our laws and game industry should learn something from Charizard and evolve. Stop remote disabling and keep games playable so gamers who want to be the very best can actually catch them all. Thank you.
Vielen Dank. Der nächste Redner ist der Kollege.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Wilken.
Frau Präsidentin, sehr geehrter Herr Kommissar.
Madam President, Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen. So the disabling of products which intervenes for televisions, computers, the right to repair is also being done away with. However, this practice has been spreading to digital media in recent years. Publishers of video games are able to decide at any moment to disable access to a game which has been purchased by a consumer despite the passion, time and creativity which has been invested in those games and the fact that communities built up around them. Unfortunately, this disabling is particularly widespread if a successor title is about to replace it. So, is this practice legal? For the time being, yes, but it's completely unfair. This is why 1.3 million citizens have quite rightly called on us to act. Commissioner, I must say I'm rather disappointed by what you had to say. You say that you see the problem, but we're still lacking any suggestions as to practical action. The problem is that we seem to be seeing video games as digital service rather than a digital product that people are passionate about. So we have to say to those passionate people, we're going to ensure that you're entitled to play this game as long as you like. You paid for it after all.
Es gibt eine Blue Card.
Mr. Wilken, a blue card from Ms. Ohisalo.
54.
Seat 54.
Kiitos kollega hyvästä puheenvuorosta. Kuten tässä hyvin sanot, niin kyse todellakin on kulttuurista.
Well, you just said clearly we're talking about a cultural product and talks about culture. Now, as Europeans, this is something we need to respect. It's a very competitive product as well. We export these products all around the world. We therefore need to find a way of addressing this issue in such a way that we can protect consumers and protect both consumers and developers. This is something we could address. Do you think museums can have a role here?
Europäische Kultursektor, gerade auch durch Videogames.
The European culture sector tells us this applies to video games. We tend to forget this. Copyright law in its present form doesn't focus enough on digital reality. And we saw this in the reform of recent legislation, where we spent years talking about the need to create libraries so that users could have access to digital media, for example, e-books, which could be lent out. We saw that there isn't much understanding for digital cultural good. This applies to video games as well. And in our legislation, we have to ensure that public libraries have a role of sharing knowledge, and video games are part of that public knowledge. Thank you. Moving on to Catch the Eye, we have a series of requests to speak. I would like to ask everybody to stick to their speaking time. That will enable us to take all those who've asked to speak. The first colleague is Mr. David, and Ms. Grappini should get ready as well, please.
Vielen Dank, Frau Präsidentin. Ich werde auf. Egy hosszú nap után csak ki szeretnék.
After a long day, if you just want to switch off and play your favorite game, suddenly you see this game is not available. Of course, you can't expect companies to keep all these games working forever, but at least they should be able to provide for the games that have been bought, that those games are functional and can be usable. And then there's another question. Once, when you buy an online game digitally, is this a loan or do you buy the game as such? Well, most of gamers agree with the second opinion, and this is clear from the European Citizens Initiative. Consumers cannot lose access to a game that they have paid for already. Therefore, we need to very urgently clarify rights and obligations. If you buy a product, you have the right to use it. It's so simple. Thank you.
Vielen Dank. Das Wort erhält nun die Kollegin Grappini.
Thank you. Ms. Grappini, Mr. Sieper, you're next.
Comisar, stimați colegi.
Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, I'd like to say the most important point. This is a very important European Citizens Initiative, and I say this with the fact that the European citizens don't use this tool enough. It's a way of European citizens proposing laws. And now we're talking about this initiative today, and I'm the Vice President of the Parliament for the single market, and we need to look at consumer protection, but we need to strike a balance. And now there's legislation which exists, but this sector of the economy doesn't fall under any of the existing laws. So, Commissioner, you need to come forward with a solution. You need to respond to this European Citizens Initiative. We talk about intellectual property, we talk about creativity, and we always say what is illegal offline is illegal online. So therefore, I fully support this initiative, and we need to come forward with some legislation.
Dankeschön. Jetzt erhält das Wort der Kollege Sieper.
The next speaker is Mr. Sieper. And the colleague Andriukaitis can get ready, please.
Europe, this is for Gressin, for Beats, for Silverbolt, for Ipoa. Because I was not only Lukas Sieper, I was Wilhelm von Bergen. Wilhelm von Bergen led men and women into battle on the fields of Mount and Blade Napoleonic Wars. He commanded up to 50 players. He trained twice every week and fought clan matches on the weekend. He edited a community newspaper, and he organized a World Cup with dozens of players, with hundreds of players from dozens of nations. And Wilhelm von Bergen existed only because Tailwalls and Flying Squirrel did not sunset the game. They turned a community mod into an official DLC. They allowed community-hosted servers. They delegated admin rights to players. They supported the modding ecosystem instead of shutting it down. Wilhelm von Bergen was lucky. I was lucky. So today I ask the Commission and my colleagues to support the ECI Stop Killing Video Games. Not only to stop killing video games, but to protect the lives that we live. Thank you very much.
Dankeschön. Das Wort erhält der Kollege.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Andriukaitis. The next speaker is Ms. Vieira.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, a lot has been said, a lot of very correct, legitimate arguments. Yes, on one hand, we have an unfair practice. On the other hand, we also have the business model, because they're looking for new clients and new players, or gamers, all the time. And in some cases, we can also talk about the problem of piracy. But let's not forget that there are consumer rights, there is also cultural digital heritage, and we need to find the right balance. Those are the games that have a long-term value need to be protected. Then when you're thinking about minors, you're going to carry out an impact assessment. So please pay special attention to minors, to how video games affect minors, because they're very vulnerable and they become easily addicted to video games. And as a former commissioner responsible for health, I would like to draw your attention to that problem. Thank you.
Dankeschön.
Thank you. Ms. Vieira, followed by our colleague Konecka.
Thank you very much. The Commissioner said that he understands the problem, and I'm glad to hear that, but that the Commission is not ready to present a solution quite yet. That's okay. We've waited many years for many amazing video games to come about, and we've also sometimes waited many years for great European laws to come. I just hope we don't have to wait as long as we've been waiting for GTA 6 to see a proposal from the Commission. And today we've spoken a lot about loving video games, but we also love in this House is democracy and citizens' rights to have their needs and their views and their desires expressed. And this is not just about 1.3 million signing a petition. After our committee meeting, I received dozens of emails from people saying, this is the first time I've watched the European Parliament speak, and I agree with you. I've received emails from around the world of people saying, I want to see the EU lead on this. We might have not been quoted on Le Monde or Euractiv, but we were on the Twitch streams. We were on the subreddits. We were reaching citizens where they are, and this is really what citizens care about. So I am really proud to support this initiative, and I deeply, deeply hope that the Commission will come forward with a proposal. Thank you.
Dankeschön. Das Wort erhält nun die Kollegin Konecka.
Thank you. The next speaker, our colleague Konecka.
Děkuji, paní předsedkyně.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dear colleagues, the situation that you buy a product and after a time it's dead and you have not been told in advance. And it sounds like a disaster. We would hardly tolerate something like that, and yet it's the reality in the video game industry. Most video games that require a constant internet connection become completely inaccessible to players who paid for them the moment the publisher decides to shut down the servers. Even if the game has a single-player mode, it becomes inaccessible. I fully understand that when you pay for something, you want to access it, especially if you had no way of knowing that after years, months, or even weeks later, you would be denied access. I fully support the citizen initiative Stop the Destruction of Video Games, and I hope that the Commission will take a similar stance and propose ways to protect players' rights and the cultural heritage that video games represent. Video games publishers must ensure that their games remain available in some form even after the shutdown of their servers. Otherwise, they are not allowed to keep their money.
Gracias, Presidenta. Si compro un libro, nadie puede entrar.
Thank you, Madam President. If you buy a book, within 5 years later, somebody can't come to my house, take it out of my bookshelf and destroy it so nobody can read it. If somebody wants to keep a copy of a film which was important in their life, we can't accept them having that taken away. That might seem unlikely for music or films, but this happens with video games. Video games are also part of our culture, a part of our collective memory. Many people want to be able to carry on playing those games 10, 20, 30 years later, to teach their children to play or share them with future generations. More than 1.2 million citizens are not asking for the earth, they're just asking for something reasonable. That's to say, a video game which they've purchased legally not be subject to destruction and continues to be something which is useful and can be played. Games are part of our culture. This is why we have to listen to and promote this initiative to stop killing video games. We want to see a legislative response to that. Thank you. Thank you very much. Back to you now, Commissioner.
Dankeschön. Honourable members, I would like to thank you for your very valuable contributions today, which give us plenty of valuable insights to reflect on as we are developing our analysis and our response. It has highlighted the complexity of the issue, which sits at the crossroads of several public policies. So this rich exchange of views also shows how European citizens' initiatives allow people to put the issue they care about directly on the European agenda. So I wish to thank all of you, honourable members, for your interventions and for your support for the direct democratic engagement of our citizens in setting the EU's agenda. And as I said earlier, we are working to present the proposal, the communication, the soonest possible. Thank you very much.
Vielen Dank, Herr Kommissar. Die Aussprache ist...
Thank you, Commissioner. That brings that debate to an end. The next item on the agenda is a Commission statement on the Union's preparedness for and response to health emergencies, the case of the MV Hondius and the Hantavirus virus warning.
Die Kolleginnen, please, colleagues, if you want to leave now, please leave quietly because we continue with the next item on the agenda. Und dann darf ich für die Kommission...
So, Commissioner, back to you.
Thank you, Madam President. Honourable members, the Hantavirus outbreak on the passenger cruise ship Hondius is a stark reminder of the risks that communicable diseases continue to pose. To date, 11 cases have been identified, of which 9 have been laboratory confirmed as the Andes Hantavirus infections. Tragically, 3 people have lost their lives. 2 patients remain as we speak in the intensive care. All suspected and confirmed cases have been isolated and managed under strict, very strict medical supervision, minimizing any risk of further transmission. At the moment, there are no signs that we are seeing the start of a larger outbreak, and I want to be very clear about this. The European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control, the ECDC, assesses the risk for the general population in Europe as very low. From the outset of the outbreak, safeguarding public health and the protection of citizens have been our top priorities. The European Commission was swift to act through the close cooperation of our health and civil protection services. First, the Health Security Committee, which brings together national health authorities, is meeting on an almost daily basis to exchange information, provide guidance and ensure coordinated response between the countries. Second, the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control provided guidance on contact clarification, management of contacts and measures for managing repatriated persons. Third, the European Reference Laboratory on Emerging Rodent-borne and zoonotic viral pathogens has been actively offering support services for quick diagnosis to national laboratories. Fourth, following Spain's request for assistance, the Union Civil Protection Mechanism was activated on the 6th of May to support the medical evacuation of European passengers and crew from Tenerife to hospitals all across Europe. Through this mechanism, the Emergency Response Coordination Centre facilitated the safe evacuation of over 70 people, including over 40 EU citizens, and coordinated 6 repatriation flights, most of which were co-financed by the European Union. Fifth, we have deployed experts from the EU Health Task Force and Commission staff to provide technical and operational support on the ground. And last but not least, additional transport, logistics, medical countermeasures from the RescEU strategic reserve remain available and ready to be deployed should the situation require it. And we are in close contact with Member States on their potential needs in this area. Honourable Members, vigilance remains a priority. Given the long incubation period of this virus, it is possible that more cases are detected in the coming weeks. This is why we continue to closely monitor the situation, working with the Health Security Committee, the ERA Board, the ECDC. Learned from the COVID-19 pandemic remain crucial for our response today, because viruses simply do not respect borders. Solidarity and global cooperation remain key to overcome such emergencies, with a strong World Health Organization at its core. So far, the response to the outbreak has been a real success story for European solidarity and demonstrates that our strengthened health security framework is indeed working. And I would like to thank Spain, the Netherlands and other Member States involved for their excellent cooperation and solidarity so far. This response also demonstrates the importance of bringing together civil protection and health emergency capacities, precisely the approach reflected in our proposal under the next MFF. It has also shown how much we have learned and improved since the COVID-19 pandemic. The new measures and the tools developed in its aftermath are today working effectively and operational immediately. But complacency is not an option, honourable members. There is no approved vaccine or specific treatment against hantaviruses in the European Union yet, which is why we are actively exploring several avenues to protect citizens against this priority threat. Through our medical countermeasure strategy and the Horizon Europe programme, we are advancing promising candidate vaccines and therapeutics against hantaviruses. Indeed, hantaviruses were included in the comprehensive health threat prioritisation assessment that we adopted back in January, as part of the European Commission's wider preparedness planning. And we are also in very close cooperation with the European Medicine Agency, consulting Member States on their current access to treatments and to their supply needs. We are also deploying dedicated instruments to reinforce the research system needed under any health emergency, including for research on this very recent outbreak. Now, in the field of clinical trials, the Be Ready partnerships enable exchange within the rich research and innovation ecosystem, including networks of research sites and infrastructures, while The durable network brings together public health laboratories and academic research institutes to generate cutting-edge evidence, taking a One Health approach. Honourable members, hantaviruses are only one of the many health threats for which we need to step up our preparedness in Europe. And we cannot prepare better in isolation. Timely adoption of the Global Health Resilience Initiative last week will contribute indeed to ensuring that prevention, preparedness and response to global health security threats also remain a priority at a global level. And it is also of relevance in the context of this most recent outbreak. Now, on Sunday, the World Health Organization declared the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Uganda as a public health emergency of international concern. The European Commission is in close contact as we speak with the World Health Organization, Africa CDC and Member States, including by convening the Health Security Committee. And we're also working and looking at the medical countermeasures that are available to support the response. We take this case very seriously. In a situation where we are also facing an Ebola outbreak at the same time, it is essential to stay vigilant and to make full use of our health security framework and the health emergency response capacities at our disposal. And that's what we do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Now for the EPP, Ms. Nevadora del Campo.
Gracias, Presidenta, querido Comisario.
Thank you very much. I'd like my first words to express my condolences to for those three people who have lost their lives on the Hondius vessel, and I hope that those who are suffering in hospitals, hope they get well soon. Now, as you said, the alert for the outbreak of this Hantavirus on the vessel, when there was individuals from 23 different countries, was sent out via the early warning system. We need to say this quite clearly. International and national coordination was conducted by the European Union. It wasn't Spanish authorities, it wasn't Prime Minister Sanchez who did this. There was a very rapid report sent by European authorities. The operational responses which were organised came from the ECDC. It wasn't Prime Minister Sanchez, and it's been the Civil Protection Mission from the European Union, as the Commission explained quite clearly, which co-financed this, and other European member states have been involved in this evaluation. France, Netherlands, Greece, Ireland supported this, but it was not Sanchez. There is another threat to global health now, and the spread of infectious diseases, and we have seen quite clearly that there is a European response to this, and that's been very beneficial. But we've also seen that Prime Minister Sanchez is trying to use any opportunity to promote themselves.
Now, Ms. Pachina for the S&D, please.
Señor Comisario.
Commissioner, as you said, on the 6th of May, the WHO launched an emergency warning for the hantavirus on the cruise ship. It also called for a response, evacuating the people. 4 days later, 148 people, including members of the crew, disembarked, were sent back to their countries of origin with very strict health protocols and placed in entirely safe quarantine. This was a major success and very effective. I think the rapid and effective response of the Spanish authorities, in cooperation with health authorities, using tools developed at the European level, in coordination with the WHO and, of course, 60 different countries. This demonstrates that the European mechanism does work. So this goes to show that when we act together, united, we're much more effective. It's important that we're talking about this today because we need to learn from this when it comes to civil protection mechanisms. Clearly, it's important that we improve coordination, simplify red tape between the member states, the European authorities, the various different authorities at the local, regional and national level. It's also very important to understand that we have to ensure that global health is included in the mechanism, so that global south countries can also participate. That's the only way to guarantee security for all of us. We also have to focus on the fight against misinformation, and that's particularly important with the authorities. So it's very important to understand the role of politicians responsible for health policy. We shouldn't allow national politicians to use the European Parliament as a forum to fight out domestic battles. Spain has showed that it has the capacity to act effectively to protect both its citizens and those of the rest of the world.
Thank you. Now for the PFE, Mr. Hauser. Thank you, President, Commissioner. We've been talking about a hantavirus over the last few days that isn't new, and we've known about it for decades. We now have confirmed cases, and tragically, 3 people have died. Now, that's terrible, of course. But what we're not talking about here is that this is not a new virus. There were thousands of cases in the past, and no one was worried about that. Let me give you some statistics. 2008, 4,310 cases. 2012, 4,670 cases. But no one's interested. In 2021, 4,909 cases. Now we have 9 cases and everybody's up in arms. You're discussing it, we're all talking about. Why? Because since 2023, Modena has started researching into a vaccination against this, and they're ready to put it to market now. So this planned epidemic has been shown it's not an epidemic. Said it's not an epidemic by the WHO. There is no particular danger from this virus. That's what they said. We should not be scaremongering. And the WHO director also said that human-to-human transmission was also extremely rare. So my suggestion to anyone listening is this is a planned pandemic. Don't join in. Learn from what we saw in COVID. And let's just ignore the panic, and then this pandemic will not happen. Next speaker is Mr. Ratzer for the ECR.
Thank you, President, Commissioner. Ladies and gentlemen, the Hantavirus case, as you just said, should not lead to panic. That's the first important message which we have to direct to the population of Europe. Once again, there's clearly a lasting memory and effect due to the previous pandemic, COVID-19. This is very important because of the impact which that pandemic left on our organizations. That pandemic caused enormous stress and burden for our health systems. We have to learn from that. We have to ensure that member states in the European Union continue to improve their ability to respond. This new emergency, which we've been told isn't actually an emergency, could be one of the initiatives which have been announced as necessary but which haven't yet been rolled out. Well, that's true that in terms of research, and of course in the European Commission, progress is being made, efforts are being made. There are 2 emerging challenges. First of all, the capacity of the European Union to act autonomously when it comes to the health industry. We know that the European Union produces electromedical health devices, but we're still being left behind by other countries. Another important question is health personnel. in upcoming weeks, the European Parliament will also be voting on the report regarding the crisis hitting the health sector in Europe. Once again, this crisis is affecting millions of professionals. So clearly, preparedness is important, but, and I'm winding up, this preparedness must focus on human resources and technological resources, which will be vital if we are to deal with future crises.
Thank you very much. For Renew now, Ms. Bossa.
Commissioner, Chairman, dear colleagues, the Hondius cruise ship case is a true reminder. We all remember COVID. Back then, Europe was not prepared. Today, we are stronger. During the Hondius case, European experts were deployed, repatriation flights were coordinated, and critical data was shared in real time. That is our health union in action. But we must never be complacent. We are now also facing another Ebola outbreak, as mentioned by our Commissioner. Virus does not respect borders. When a healthcare crisis hits, we are all in the same boat. That's why more European cooperation is the way forward. While the far right, as we just heard, retreats into short-sighted nationalism, we choose citizens' safety. We choose foresight. We must invest. That's the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now for the Greens, Mr. Maza Ibanez.
Thank you, Madam President. We can understand Europe in various different ways, but here we've seen how Europe rescued more than 100 people from 42 countries in the port in the Canaries. On one side we have people screaming, on the other we see systems working. There's no miracle in this. This works when the WHO, the European Prevention Centre and Member States work together rather than simply talking. That's what multilateralism is all about. And this is the way we can save lives. This worked because we had a government which intervened. The Minister, Monica Garcia, was constantly out in the field, not in TV studios screaming. She was working on finding solutions. Thank you to the public health sector, which, as we've just heard, is effective. So some people are defending fantasies while our health systems continue to work. So the European Union has to focus on things which work, improve coordination, improve funding for joint response, support public health systems in all member states. The next emergency is just over the horizon, and we won't stop it either with fantasies or with a partisan approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now for the left, Ms. Matic.
Thank you, Madam President. Let's imagine that we'd followed the example of the far right and we'd left the WHO. We'd be left without coordination, without response, without any early warning system. Luckily, this didn't happen, and in fact, the United States have actually thanked the rest of the world for their activity in relation to this. Now, we need to be clear. Our condolences to the families of those who've lost their lives, but we need to be clear. We need permanent cooperation. There is no cause for alarm, but there is proof here, and once again, that no country on their own can protect their citizens. Again, it's proof that if you cut budget from health budgets to build more weapons, then this is not the way forward. We need medical research, we need a strong budgets for the health area, and we need to continue supporting the WHO.
Thank you very much. Now for the ESN, Ms. Anderson.
Thank you. It is a tragedy what happened on the MV Hondius. People died, others became seriously ill. And of course we must act when a health emergency happens, but proportionally, with restraint and respect for subsidiarity.
But yet again, you use a rare and highly specific outbreak aboard a confined expedition vessel to implement more permanent crisis structures, more monitoring, more coordination mechanisms, more top-down management of society at European level. And even now, as the scientific picture remains uncertain and highly context-specific, and transmission outside the vessel itself is extremely limited, your political conclusion already seems predetermined. More centralization, more EU-level emergency governance, and more permanent crisis structure. But while completely overlooking that public health remains a competence of the member states, step by step, the exception becomes the norm, temporary emergency logic becomes permanent governing philosophy. Preparedness must serve free societies and not slowly transform them into societies governed permanently by fear and in crisis mode to justify the obliteration of even more fundamental rights. This is the wrong way. Thank you.
That is the end of speakers for the groups. And again, I'm going to be stricter with the time. Next speaker, Mr. Schenk. President, Commissioner, colleagues. The new Ebola and Hantavirus outbreaks show that viruses don't respect borders, and health crises are part of our security architecture. 3 of the 4 new diseases come from the animal world. Climate change and the destruction of habitats and close habitats between animals and people increase the risk. So the question is not if there's going to be a next health crisis, but whether or not we're prepared for it. We've learnt from COVID in Europe with the European Health Task Force and the laboratory network, and we can recognise outbreaks more quickly and act in a coordinated fashion now. But let's not get trapped in dependencies again, not for diagnostics, not for medicines, nor for protective equipment. We have to bolster Europe's capacities for medical reaction and for the procurement of medical equipment. Health of people and animals should not be seen in different political silos. Europe's health protection begins not at our borders, but there where outbreaks take place. Prevention and health partnerships should be invested in because that's protecting freedom, health and economic stability for the future. Mr. Schenk, there's a blue card from Mr. Sieper. Do you accept that? I do. 253, please. Thank you very much, Mr. Schenker, for accepting my blue card. At the beginning and the end of your speech, you said that viruses and illnesses don't recognise borders. Now, Ms. Anderson has said that health prevention is a member state issue and it's a question of subsidiarity. So that I can sleep this evening, could you perhaps explain to Ms. Anderson why viruses don't recognise borders and why it is therefore useful to do this at European level? Perhaps you give us a scientific angle on that. Well, it's clear since COVID the global situation this represents. When something happens somewhere in the world, a long way from Europe, we have mobility and networking in the modern world, and so it affects all of us. And so in Europe we have to react as well. Beyond borders, we need to research together, we need to put in place joint protection measures and act in a cross-border way. In the past, we struggled with these issues, but we mustn't struggle in the future. Thank you.
Nächste Rednerin ist die Kollegin Jarkovic.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Ms. Jarkovic.
Dear colleagues, Commissioner, all those urgent procedures and difficult lessons learned from COVID-19 have paid off. Thanks to the European Union's rapid response, the activation of the civil protection mechanism and the mobilisation of stockpiles from our strategic reserve, the passengers were safely evacuated. The truth is that Europe has become better,
at coordination, preparedness, and at acting together under pressure. But we still depend too heavily on fragmented national systems in moments when speed, clarity, and unity are essential. Citizens expect Europe to protect them not only economically and politically, but also in times of health emergencies. And this means further strengthening the role of the ECDC. It means investing further in joint preparedness, strategic reserves, and cross-border crisis response. And it means ensuring that solidarity is permanently embedded into the way the Union functions. Thank you.
Dankeschön. Jetzt erhält das Wort.
Thank you very much. No, Mr. Castillo has the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam President, Commissioner, and dear colleagues. Hantavirus reminds us once again that health crises are not one-off situations, but ongoing problems that people need to prepare for. I'd like to thank all of those who have been mobilised and have been involved in protecting our citizens across Europe. We also need to learn the lessons of the past. The COVID crisis showed us our weaknesses and also showed us the importance of strengthening our prevention, research and coordination capabilities. There's one key lesson we need to learn from the past. When there is no transparency, then people start losing trust. When people lose trust, then there are conspiracy theories. If there is no public trust, then a public health policy will not be successful. We need to be clear. We need to tell the truth. We need to act with transparency. We need to rebuild public trust between institutions and the people of Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Mr. Picardo.
President, Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen. As we saw during the COVID-19 pandemic, Europe cannot take the risk of failing to prepare for the next pandemic, acting in a fragmented, delayed or improvised way. So the recent cases of Hantavirus and Ebola virus show that health emergencies can emerge very quickly in an unexpected way and put health systems, communities, laboratories and economies under enormous pressure. It's important that we continue to progress in ensuring that our response to health emergencies be effective, but it's still patchy. We have to support laboratories, we have to improve access to data, we have to invest in qualified personnel and set up coordination systems between member states. All of those are necessary measures to enable us to reduce response times and enhance the effectiveness of future actions to prevent and contain epidemics. This is the only way that Europe can act in proximity to its citizens.
Thank you very much. Mr. Alioni, please. President, Commissioner, when a boat with 9 European nationalities on board is struck by a virus in the middle of the Atlantic, it's not just one capital city that has to respond. A European chain of action is put in place. Coordination and complementary action. Now, this chain didn't exist before COVID, but now it's really operational. We learnt the lessons of that global pandemic. We were able to make Europe able to react to health crises. Our reactions are quicker, from a few months to a few days, and we show more solidarity now in the Union. But we still need to go further. Last week, Commissioner, I was in Corsica, and they're setting up high-level laboratories. Let's follow that initiative and make islands in the Mediterranean, in the outermost regions, watch posts for these pathogens. Citizens in Europe want us to take all the opportunities available to make sure that we can prevent catastrophes. Thank you. Thank you very much. Mrs. Valentino Palmisano, please.
Thank you, President. viruses don't carry passports. They don't ask for permission to cross our borders. Above all, they don't wait for Europe to be ready to deal with them. We learnt the hard lessons of the pandemic. The recent Hantavirus outbreak shows that global health threats are not something of the past. They're still very much present. Activation of civil protection mechanisms, which meant that we had an effective evacuation of passengers of the cruise ship, was something to remind us of, Commissioner. But our management of health challenges can't just be dealt with in this way. After COVID, we promised European citizens that health would be an absolute priority for the European Union. Today, however, we see that effective health programmes are being cut, while at the same time the global menace is growing. In practical terms, health means we have to invest in protection, strengthen public health systems, collect data, prepare our response before crises actually happen rather than during or after. So we need more funds, less red tape. Health is not just another policy, it strikes at the very heart of the lives of our citizens.
Thank you. Mr. Youngen, please.
Beim kleinsten Anlass.
Any excuse in the EU's greed for epidemics kicks in. A little hantavirus with 11 cases is turned into a health crisis by Brussels. But we can see the intent behind that. The new preparedness union is to turn any little health problem into a state of emergency. Together with the WHO, you're trying to grasp power and over emergency measures. The WHO is even trying to turn the climate change into a health emergency with international scope. High alert, just like for corona. That then justifies violations of limitations of basic rights and a health dictatorship around the world. This creeping undermining of democracy by creating crises ourselves has to end. Local crises like Ebola need to be dealt with locally rather than scaremongering and using to the benefit of corrupt politicians and global pharma businesses.
Yes, you have a request for blue card from Mr. Brandstatter Helmut. You okay? Okay. Monsieur Brandstatter, vous pouvez poser votre question.
Mr. Brandstatter, you can ask your question. Simple question. What lockdown has just been put in place? Could you explain that? And do you think this was a planned pandemic? Do you think COVID was a planned pandemic? Thank you very much, Mr. Brandstatter, for that. Well, we've heard what wasn't going to happen when COVID, and then it happened. We were told that vaccinations weren't going to be mandatory, and then they were. In Germany, it nearly happened. Everything that was said ahead of time then actually happened. And that's going to happen again here. Yes, there's a virus behind this, but what politicians do with that is a justification of this term plandemic, a planned pandemic. This is not half as serious as politicians are making out. Thank you very much. Katerina Konechna, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioner. 30 days. That is exactly how long it took the Commission to issue the first coordinated statement after the first person died aboard MV Hondius. 30 days during which hundreds of European citizens travelled home without uniform quarantine measures, without clean information, often without protection. The coordination didn't exist. There was the flag state, the port state, the ECDC and WHO, and they didn't cooperate. The result was confusion regarding disembarkation conditions. HERA has been in existence since 2021, yet we were importing test kits from Argentina. Is that your preparedness? The Commission is now selling us the activation of the early warning system as a success, but I say this is the minimum standard. A success would have been acting before the WHO had to alert Brussels about the ship. This crisis turned out relatively well. But next time, I don't know.
Madam Commissioner.
Thank you, Ms. Konechna. Mr. Shocker.
Dear Mr. Vice Chair, Commissioner, ladies and colleagues, medical crises have shown in the last years how important it is that the EU acts in solidarity and quickly. The recent case, Hantavirus, the MV Hondius, is a proof that the public health threats may appear fast, and the coordinated quick response is also key. Therefore, the framework for health security is being strengthened in the past years, and regulation on cross-border health threats is very important, and the EU has, in this regulation, managed to reply to cross-border crises, to exchange information better, coordinate better, and manage crisis situations much better. We also have strengthened the ECDC and other European bodies, but have also established capacities for common procurement of procedure, vaccines, and medicines. Hondius' case has shown that this coordination is important when there is a doubt of a potential infectious disease on a passenger ship. We need to act swiftly and to have clear protocols. We have a increased mobility of population today, but this increased risks also increases the potential of infectious diseases. So our message is clear. The EU must not be unprepared for the upcoming health crises. We need to invest in common capacities, in the strength of our systems, and develop the European Health Union. Health security is not only a national issue, but rather European security, stability issue, and the issue of the belief and faith of the citizens in the EU. Only timely reactions can efficiently protect the health of EU citizens. Thank you.
Marc Germain.
Thank you. Jean-Marc Germain, please.
Monsieur le Président, chers collègues.
President, ladies and gentlemen, the outbreak of an infection on a cruise ship, alarming symptoms, deaths, and the hunt for contact cases. The rapid arrival of the Hantavirus gave all of us the impression we were about to relive the COVID nightmare. That pandemic showed us how badly prepared Europe was, lacking organisation, dependent on China for masks, medicine and vaccines. So the Europeans said, never again. We set up the EU for Health programme to fund the future European response to health threats. Now, however, the Commission shows it has a short memory. It has put forward a budgetary proposal which simply does away with that programme. Fortunately, the Parliament said no and insisted that the appropriations be reinstated. However, there is a lack of a legal basis, and only the European Commission can re-establish that legal base. So, the ball's in your court, Commissioner. I do hope that Hantavirus, as well as the emerging Ebola epidemic, will act as a booster to your memories so that you come forward with the proposals we need. The President interrupts.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Marie-Louise Président.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you very much, President, Commissioner. The MV Hondius episode shows that we're never prepared enough for health crises, even though we've learnt the lessons of previous crises. Let's welcome the work done together between national and European authorities to evacuate the people on board that vessel. Quarantine protocols are different for different member states, and that's been criticised, but let's not use that as a pretext to undermine the health competence that member states enjoy. So far, EU coordination has worked well. That's what we need to focus on. We need to make sure that EU measures available, like the civil protection mechanism, are complementary with member state terms. Let's also make sure that the outermost regions are considered. They are often vulnerable entry points for these diseases. Let's make sure that medication reserves and equipment stocks are available rapidly as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Bartulica.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues. What have we learned from the pandemic? Very little, I'm afraid. What actually happened? The situation was abused. The media were spreading fear among people. Even now, we can see elderly people in the streets wearing masks. So we cannot allow this to happen in the name of protecting people. The new pandemic agreement has a number of traps. We must be very critical when it comes to the intentions of these people. It is enough to see how the World Health Organization is financed nowadays. The money comes mostly from private sources, not from government. So there are different interests in play here, and we were able to see this during the COVID pandemic.
Thank you, Juan Fernando López Aguilar.
Merci, President. Comisario,
thank you. Have we learnt from COVID, Commissioner? We have learnt some lessons, and we have an outbreak of the new pandemic, Hantavirus. We've seen that viruses don't know borders, so we need to also be evidence-based. We need to have a responsible solidarity, as has been seen from the government of Spain, and you recognise this. Now, the 10th and the 11th of May, there was people who left the vessel, and then we express our condolences to the families of those who have lost their lives. But there was also this as an exercise of solidarity. And some people have tried to exploit the fear in this, but the response always needs to be strengthened civil protection, European solidarity, and we need to link together health policies, and we need to increase funding levels for research. Thank you very much. Thank you, dear colleagues. So now I'd like to open the Catch the Eye procedure. I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Andriukaitis, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioner, thank you very much indeed for your very excellent presentation. Of course, let me tell to our room, to our Parliament, that now, can you imagine, we had Zika outbreak, we had Ebola, monkeypox, COVID-19, now once again Hantavirus. It can show us how it is important to have in our hands European solidarity mechanism, Union civil protection mechanism, strong ECDC, and of course budget. Commissioner, please tell me, are you ready to defend European health, EU for health program, which should allow us to be more active and more strongest? Of course, healthcare workforce shortages, a lot of challenges in front of us, but also, let me remind you, we need to conclude the pandemic treaty, because in 1st of May it was not achieved. We need to move forward to pressing globally our governments to ratify annex of this treaty. This is an emergency. We need to do it.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Christian Terres, please.
Thank you. Dear Commissioner, you talked about the hantavirus vaccine, which will require other set of contracts. But when will you publish the unredacted contracts signed by Ursula von der Leyen with Pfizer and Moderna? Those contracts led to the purchase of billions of so-called COVID-19 vaccine doses, more than 10 doses per person in Europe. The European Parliament demanded the full disclosure of these contracts, and the Commission failed to do so yet. In this plenary, Ursula von der Leyen said that the anti-COVID-19 vaccines are safe and effective. She lied. Pfizer's representative admitted here that the company never tested if their vaccine is stopping the transmission of the virus because they had to move at the speed of science. That's what they said. EMA is acknowledging officially that tens of thousands of Europeans died spontaneously after being injected with the so-called anti-COVID-19 vaccines. I have uncovered that Moderna was testing the COVID-19 vaccines way before 2019. I hold here an mRNA vaccine pattern register in 2025. The question to you is, are you going to impose on us another set of contracts like this one?
Votre temps est...
Your time has come to an end. There is a freedom for a debate, but for those who are going to listen to this debate, I would ask them to pay attention to fake news and make sure you get correct scientific information. Cynthia Nivrurcher, please.
Commissioner,
Thank you, President.
Hantavirus,
we can see here with Hantavirus and with Ebola that there's going to be no end to these emergencies, and we have to be very quick in our work if we want to deal with them properly. We have some lessons that we have learned from COVID-19, and we can see that we have a system that is not working properly. We need to be able to work more speedily, more hastily, and we also have to have more investment in the long term in areas of health. We also have to have better cooperation between national authorities and European authorities, and as well as more flexibility. We need to have a more sensible approach.
Thank you very much. Helmut Brandstatter, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, President, Commissioner. The FPO has put out so much nonsense that I'd like to correct things. We've heard that a few people have died of hantavirus. This is always the case. Well, that's incredible. And then they said this is a planned pandemic. Now, that's a conspiracy theory. A planned pandemic, which is what they called COVID as well. Both of those are to insult the millions of people who died. And then we've heard that they're against vaccinations, and I would like to refute that and say I'm grateful to researchers who create vaccines and prepare for future crises. I'm happy that there is research into vaccinations. I'm happy that there are companies doing that. We need those vaccinations. It's really sad that there are still people who support these conspiracies instead of basing themselves on science, put their trust in science, which is protecting life for future generations.
Thank you very much. The Catch the Eye procedure is closed, and I have the pleasure to give the floor back to the Commissioner Tsikostas.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Honourable members, thank you for this exchange that shows indeed once again that prevention, preparedness and response to health crises continue to be of the utmost importance. Our priority is to protect citizens from the virus and to support member states and global efforts to respond to this outbreak. And this is very clear. In close cooperation with the Health Security Committee, the ERA Board and the ECDC, the European Commission will continue to monitor the situation very closely. This means continuous epidemiological and situational updates, exchanges on passengers or contacts through our early warning and response systems, updates on any further laboratory testing and sequencing being carried out through the EU reference laboratory, as well as continuing the work to advance the development of promising vaccines and therapeutics against hantavirus. We will keep the European Parliament, of course, abreast and informed of all the new developments as they evolve. Honourable members, the EU has the necessary tools in place now. We have a strong health security framework that is coordinated through the Health Security Committee. This framework includes robust capacities for health emergency preparedness and response through agencies like EMA, the ECDC, and through the dedicated Commission service working on medical countermeasures, DG ERA. We also have a reactive Union civil protection mechanism. All of these are key cornerstones of our preparedness Union strategy. But we also need to secure adequate budget in the context of the next MFF. And this is where we need your support. The global health threats landscape is dire, and recent outbreaks, including the ongoing outbreak of Ebola in the Democratic Republic of Congo and Uganda, are clear reminders of the need to continue to strengthen our health preparedness. But I want to underline one thing. Europe today is ready. Europe today, after the work and the previous experience from the COVID pandemic, has set in place rules that allow us to function in a way that gives responses to crises like this one. And I want to agree with our Commissioner earlier that we need to work together in close coordination, EU level and Member States, as well as all the health organisations across the globe, to prevent such pandemics that hit and hurt the health of our citizens and could create a very big blow to our economies and societies as well. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Commissaire.
Thank you, Commissioner. The debate is closed. We'll take a very brief break for a couple of minutes before moving on to the next point on our agenda. Thank you very much.
Bien. Avant d'appeler le...
Well, before moving on to the next item on our agenda, I'd like to say that the Renew Group has communicated to the President a decision in relation to changes to the allocation of committees. This decision will be set out in the minutes for this sitting and will be applied as of this date. Now, this is on... Now we move on to a Commission statement on the need for an adaptation of the EU legal framework on sustainable biofuels. To open this debate, I'd like to give the floor to Commissioner Apostolos Tsikostas.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Honourable members, for the second time in less than 5 years, Europeans are paying the price of Europe's strong dependency on imported fossil fuels. The situation in the Strait of Hormuz remains volatile. We all know there will be no quick recovery for energy markets and that impacts go well beyond energy. Once this conflict is over, market stabilisation will still take months and risk levels remain heightened. This is a stark reminder that accelerating the transition to clean, secure and affordable energy is not only of the essence to avoid the impacts of global warming, but a clear economic and security imperative. The Commission has laid down its response to the crisis in the Accelerate EU communication. Coordination is key. And we will work with Member States to ensure that national measures and measures aimed at ensuring the availability of fuels are closely coordinated. A new fuel observatory will track EU production, imports, exports and stock levels of transport fuels. Timely, targeted and temporary measures protecting consumers, including industry, from price peaks is for us key. Promote electrification by stepping up the grid system, accelerating the shift to EU domestic clean energy, which can replace significant volumes of oil and gas. This crisis confirms the approach envisaged by the EU legislation to decarbonise transport, including through the Sustainable Transport Investment Plan that is adopted in 2025, just 3 months ago. On decarbonising road transport, renewable fuels, including sustainable biofuels and sustainable e-fuels, play a very critical role in several hard-to-abate sectors, including aviation and maritime transport. It is hence essential to support and incentivise the production in Europe of sustainable biofuels and e-fuels. In addition, as stated in the Accelerate EU communication, for other sectors, such as agriculture, fisheries and mobility logistics, increased access to sustainable biofuels for existing combustion engine vehicles can secure their uninterrupted contribution to the supply chain, notably for food. However, biofuels need to be sustainable, with no induced negative impacts, as outlined also in the Sustainable Transport Investment Plan that I presented last year. This is why co-legislators decided to limit their contribution towards the renewable energy targets, and why they are not eligible to contribute towards the targets set out under Refuel EU Aviation and Fuel EU Maritime. Biofuels produced from feedstocks with high indirect land use change, ILUC risk, competing with food and feed production and associated with deforestation are gradually phased out unless they meet very specific criteria. Importantly, these rules do not prevent or restrict biofuel imports into the European Union. They only apply for the counting towards renewable energy targets. Now, the Commission recently reviewed the data underpinning the delegated act setting out the methodology for determining which biofuels are to be considered to have a high risk, ILUC risk. It was found that both palm oil and soybeans qualify as high-risk feedstock according to this criteria. The Commission therefore revised the ILUC Delegated Act and was submitted in the Parliament on April 10th. In parallel, we are currently working on the rules for certification of low-risk ILUC, envisaging a first draft of an amendment to the Implementing Act by the end of this year. The Commission will, in line with legal mandate, continuously review and update the data to ensure that the identification of high-risk crops remains up to date and based on the latest available scientific evidence. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Commissaire.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Massimiliano Salini, please.
Grazie, Presidente. Thank you, President. Thank you, Commissioner. When it comes to biofuels, there's a long history, much disagreement, which sometimes debate was designed to better understand it. In other cases, it was designed to limit the powers or scope of the European institutions. We need a framework for biofuels. That's clear now. We need a solid instrument to support some of the main pillars of our agenda, one of which is, of course, or the first of which is decarbonation, as you said. Secondly, diversification, and thirdly, reduction of the EU's dependency. This is why it's important and useful for us to step up the use of biofuels in the transport sector, aviation, maritime, but also road transport. Why? For two reasons. First of all, this is an instrument which the effects of which in terms of integration of the farming sector are quite clear. Secondly, because road transport, as we're now seeing with the revision of the CO2 emissions regulation for light vehicles, needs support so as to promote technological neutrality. Biofuels are perfect to achieve this. Why? They're easily available and they don't involve major investment in infrastructure. And in terms of infrastructure, they're part of a circular economy for vehicles, so enormous advantages. Obviously, we very much hope that the EU's ability to regulate on this will enable us to simplify the rules, as we've heard from the Commission.